Arya Stark was 19 days into the journey south before she admitted to herself that she no longer marched for home. The riverland sprawled behind her like a ruined tapestry of drowned pastures and scorched villages, every mile pounding the soles of her boots with grief that had long since hardened into something sharper. Home was a memory, blurred by smoke from hearth fires she would never sit beside again. What drew her onward now was a different hearth, one ablaze in a place her father had once named the Red Keep, where a lion ruled from a chair of blades and wove dead men into his banners. Across the weed-choked track, dusk bled through clouds like spilled wine, and Arya tasted metal on her tongue. In the stillness between rustling wheat stalks, she rehearsed her list: Joffrey, Cersei, Ilan Payne, Meryn Trant, Polliver, Rorge, and let the final name settle over them all like a burial shroud: Tywin Lannister. Heat rose from the stones of a deserted cottage where she made camp that night. Ghosts of a family lingered in the abandoned rooms. A child's pins in the rushes, a cracked ladle hanging askew, a scorched sigil she could not place carved into the lintel. She fed the hearth with splintered chair legs until embers glowed the color of dying roses. Beside her lay the hound's old cloak, pilfered back at the crossroads. Its stink of sweat had faded, but the memories clung: his ragged breaths, the rasp of sword on mail, the abrupt silence when she left him bleeding under the aspen tree. Mercy, she'd whispered then, as he had once mocked her for begging. Now she slept curled against the cloak, wondering whether the man she had spared still prowled Westeros, or whether wolves had chewed his bones clean. Dreams came fitful and crimson. Wolves howled beneath a moon so vast it swallowed the sky, their eyes reflecting a keep of iron walls. She walked among them barefoot, blades of frosted grass cutting her heels, yet she felt no pain. A shadow in gold armor stood before the keep, visor closed, sword raised. Every wolf bared its teeth. Before steel met fang, Arya startled awake, heart galloping. Dawn slipped through the shutters, turning ash to silver dust. She rose, strapped needle across her back, and left the cottage without looking back. The wolves of her dream followed in her wake, silent, watchful, unseen. Roads crumbled to goat tracks as she skirted the King's Road, avoiding patrols that flew the lion or the red comet of the king's new legitimized bastards. She moved at twilight, ducking hedgerows, sleeping by day beneath waystones carved with crack-clad runes she could not read. At a creek swollen with snowmelt, she stole a smith's mule, leaving 3 silver stags in its place. The mule bore her willingly through pine forest alive with songbirds. Each chirrup reminded her of Sirio's cadence, swift as a deer, quiet as a shadow. The memories no longer hurt like fresh bruises. They were scars now, hard, ridged, and useful. When the walls of King's Landing rose at last, they were dull ochre beneath storm clouds, squat as toads beside the cliffs. The city stank of tallow smoke and river muck. Arya abandoned the mule to a tanner's boy and slipped into the flow of carts at Mudgate. No one glanced twice at a skinny orphan clutching a bundle. She adopted a stoop, a shuffle, let her gaze drag along the cobbles. The guards were drunk on boredom, eyes half-lidded. Past the arch, their laughter faded under the clamor of Fishmonger Square. Vendors hawking river eels, rag pickers sifting refuse, washerwomen slapping linen against soaked boards. Noise became armor. She wrapped it around herself and faded into the labyrinth. In Flea Bottom she rented a pallet in an attic that smelled of mice and tarragon. The innkeep, a toothless woman called Magpie Bess, never asked names so long as the copper flowed. Arya listened more than she spoke, gathering rumors the way old Nan gathered candle stubs. Joffrey had taken to staging mock wars in the yard, they said, catapulting live hares against the walls to hear them scream. Lord Varys drifted like a pale spider from council to council, weaving threads no one saw. And Tywin Lannister, Hand of the King, held court each dawn in the Tower of the Hand, dispensing justice as casually as most men shed hair. Petitions began at sunrise. By midday, his decisions had remade the realm. At night, he dined with his generals, or shut himself away with parchment and raven quill until the moon's arc collapsed. The gold of Casterly Rock, they whispered, never slept. Arya started mapping habits. Twice she trailed a steward who carried baskets of ink pots to the tower. She learned how the guards changed every 3 hours. Gray cloaks of the city watch replaced by red cloaks of the Lannister host, then back again. One lantern in a clerestory window winked out the moment dawn brushed the sea. By the 3rd week, she could recite the route of Lord Tywin's litter, through the Middle Bailey, under the painted gallery, past the ornamental pools rimmed in black marble, then beneath the shadow of the sept where the gold cloaks would bow. She counted the guards, 2 at the head, 4 pacing either flank, 2 at the rear. Too many, unless she became one of them. Steel Coin bought her a dull steel dirk, curved like a viper's smile. Sewn into a wineskin on her hip, it cleared even the most cursory search. For the rest, she needed brazenness, so she crafted it from rags. A footman's tunic dyed Lannister crimson with beet juice. A leather doublet filched from a drunk in an alley. Pauldrons hammered from tin slats and lacquered to shine like real metal. The city swarmed with sellswords seeking coin and a scrap of honor. One more ill-fitted mercenary would blend into the scape like another brick in a kiln. The night she donned her garb, thunder rippled over Blackwater Bay. Rain sluiced gutters, washing away beggars' chalk marks and the reek of rotten fish. Arya wound her braid tight, tucked it beneath a velvet cap, and stepped into the storm's camouflage. She crossed cobblestones slick as mirror shards, past a knot of watchmen sheltering under the Widow's Bridge, nodded briskly. None spared her a second glance. She tasted freedom in the rain, salt and copper mingling on her lips. At the Tower of the Hand, a pair of halberdiers barred her path. Their plumes drooped in the downpour. "Orders!" she barked, mimicking the clipped arrogance she'd heard from Lannister sergeants. "Lord Hand requires escort to the Sept for Matins. He'll not wait for slack-jawed shanks to sober." "Dah." One guard squinted, torchlight flaring in his visor. "New badge, ain't you?" "Eh. From the Westerlands levy. Reported yesterday." She tapped the tin pauldron, let the torchlight gleam off the lacquer. "Check the rolls if you care to freeze your bollocks off." He grunted, motioned her through. Inside, torchlit corridors shimmered with damp reflections. The air smelled of foxglove parchment and cold iron. Echoes of dripping water chased her footfalls up a stair too narrow for a noble's stride. At the landing she paused, pulse drumming. Somewhere beyond the oak-carved doors lay the lion. Beyond those doors, too, lay death. She pushed on. The study was vast, ceiling lost in gloom. The only light a trio of candles guttering on a reading desk piled with ledgers. Shadows writhed across shelves lined with histories of conquest and ledgers of debt. At first, she thought the chamber empty, then the chair turned. Tywin Lannister sat within reaching distance, robed in black wool, hands clasped upon the pommel of an unsheathed longsword that rested point down between his boots. The steel glinted silver. Rubies winked in the eyes of the lion wrought into the hilt. Rain beat against the window casements. Neither of them spoke. Here was the face from all the whispers. Broad brow, high cheekbones, gaze keener than flint. Time had thinned his gold hair to pale strands, but age lent him a grandeur no crown could grant. He studied her attire, noting each stain, each ill-mended seam. A lesser lord might have summoned guards. Tywin only raised one eyebrow. "You are the escort who should have met me 2 turns below," he said, voice dry as old vellum. "You are also no man." Arya's breath froze. Her hand inched toward the wineskin. Tywin stood. "Remove the dirt before you embarrass us both." Lightning unveiled the room in stark white, revealing crossbow slits on either side of the door. She saw no guards posted there, only niches where statues may have stood once. Darkness returned. "I know your voice, girl." The hand paced, sword tip dragging a faint scratch across the flagstones. "Storm's End, was it?" "No. Harrenhal. A boy called Weasel who vanished one night, taking secrets with him." He paused by the hearth, eyes like molten brass. "Walked among mice and spiders. Quite a trick." Arya removed the wineskin. Dirks felt heavier when destiny coiled around them. "What do you want?" His boredom was genuine, unforced. Justice. The word emerged low. Feral. A small supply in this room. He rested one palm on the mantel. Does it bite? Arya advanced, drawing needle from its sheath across her spine. Steel hissed soft as sighing silk. Yes. For a heartbeat, Tywin regarded the blade. Recognition flickering. Valyrian? No, castle forged. Northerners' work. Your father carried similar, though longer. She lunged. He parried with the longsword's flat, strength meeting speed, sparks flaring. Needle's point slid off his guard. Scraping leather. He stepped aside, surprisingly lithe. Another thrust, this time a feint to his right. She pivoted low, seeking the juncture of knee and greave. Tywin pivoted, cloak swirling, blade descending toward her exposed shoulder. She rolled, felt wind of steel passing inches above. Up again, heart hammering, tasting blood where she'd bitten her cheek. You fight well. He sounded almost amused. Who trained you? Not that fat eunuch Smith. None? Sirio Forel, she spat, dancing left. The old name steadied her heart. Tywin's gaze sharpened. Bravo C. Figures. Metal rang, clashed, sang. Each step he took was economic, conserving motion. Each step she took was rhythm, water dense. Yet he was stronger, reach longer. Twice he nearly trapped Needle against a shelf. Sweat blurred her vision, stinging her eyes. The candles guttered lower. Shadows elongated into monstrous forms. When next she closed, he changed tactics. Instead of blocking, he advanced, blade swinging in precise arcs, turning her defense into retreat. She stepped back, once, twice, and her heel struck the upturned lip of a bronze brazier. Balance faltered. In that instant, Tywin lunged. Arya twisted, let go of Needle, seized the dirk. Steel bit flesh. A shallow slice along his sword arm, before his pommel struck her temple. Sparks burst behind her eyelids. She stumbled, tasting copper. Tywin kicked the dirk from her grip. It skittered under a desk. Enough, he said. You've spirit, but spirit does not close a gap. He waited for her to rise, sword poised. Tell me, daughter of Eddard, what does justice mean to a corpse? Rage eclipsed pain. She flung herself forward, barehanded. Tywin's blade rose, but not swiftly enough to stop Needle, which she had released yet never abandoned. The swordmaster taught that steel remembers. As she dove, she kicked the brazier. It toppled with a clang, candles scattering embers across parchment. Needle, balanced against its rim, leapt into her palm. She thrust upward with all a wolf's fury. Needle pierced beneath the breastbone, slipping between rings of mail hidden under the wool. Tywin's mouth formed an O, air escaping like a moan lost in wind. His sword dropped, clattering. His fingers quested at the wound as though uncertain of its existence. Blood welled dark. Arya drew the blade free. The corpse answers. Smoke from the scattered candles licked the scrolls, flames blooming along inked margins. Tywin sank to his knees. He did not plead. Even as life fled, he fixed her with that lion's stare. As if memorizing her face for some ledger, he would carry past the veil. Words formed, but blood choked them. One final breath shuddered, and stopped. Silence swallowed the chamber. Fire spread across the desk, curling edges of vellum. Arya's legs trembled. She knelt, wiped Needle clean on Tywin's cloak, and reclaimed the dirk. No triumph warmed her, only cold resolve. Outside, thunder muttered. Alarms would soon howl if she remained. From the mantel, she tore a roll of parchment unburned by stray sparks. Orders for River Run, sealed with red wax and lion sigil. She slid it into her sleeve without knowing why. Perhaps because Sirio had told her information was a blade unseen. She found the secret stair behind the tapestry where Tywin had stood moments earlier. Descending felt like drowning through layers of darkness. At the base she emerged in a corridor of the Red Keep, seldom trod, walls damp, torches dim. Somewhere far above, Bells began to toll. A hand's death, she thought, or a lion's wail. Arya emerged with shadows, an orphan once more. Rain washed the blood from her tunic, dye running in crimson rivulets down the stones until none could tell cloth from gore. She did not look back at the Tower of the Hand, now haloed in smoke. Ahead lay Flea Bottom, the Blackwater, the Whispering World. Behind lay a corpse that would shake kingdoms. Needle rested warm against her spine. Her list was shorter by one. But kingdoms did not quiet when lions fell. They roared. The bells tolled on. Ilam. Ha. Bells pealed through the storm-drenched dawn, their iron tongues striking in mad succession. A frenzy that clawed at stone and sky alike. From the alleys of Flea Bottom to the marble lodges of Magers. Holdfast the clamor settled into marrow. It reverberated in cracks between cobbles, rattled shutters, woke sleepers gasping from dreams. The first cries were scattered: fire, riot, invasion, but soon a single rumor spilled like lamp oil. The Hand was dead, murdered in his own tower. Tywin Lannister had fallen. Questions swarmed, half-formed, without answers to anchor them, and in that vacuum, the city's pulse lurched. Arya slipped among that panicked rhythm, as if she were the silence itself. Damp straw clung to her borrowed boots, unwashed hair matted to her nape, hiding the braid she had loosened on the flight downhill. She kept to fishmongers' stalls, to bakeries loading dawn bread into mule carts, to the shadow beneath archways where even lamplight dared not linger. Behind her, the Red Keep's silhouette rose jagged and black against bruised clouds, its ramparts festooned with lanterns that bobbed like angry fireflies. She felt their eyes groping the streets, not knowing what shape to hunt. The list was shorter by one, yet the city felt no lighter. Winds off the Blackwater carried the tang of smoke, parchment and wool burning somewhere high, perhaps the study still aflame, and each gust brought back the metallic scent of the dead man's blood, as if memory bled alongside it. She found Magpie Bess's attic door unlatched. Inside, dust motes whirled in a single shaft of morning gray, and two shapes huddled against the far wall. A boy of no more than 8 clutching a broom as though it were spear, and an elderly man draped in the blanket she had paid for with stolen coppers. Both flinched when she entered. "Storm outside," she muttered, voice rasped to a different register. No place for rabbits in a hawk sky. The boy's eyes, twin chips of flint from the north, if she judged the tilt, narrowed. He lowered his broom only when Arya produced a heel of bread and placed it on the floorboards. Hunger was a language even wolves and sparrows shared. She rolled her cloak, shoved it beneath loose floorboards, and wrapped herself in a stained shift she kept for sleeping. The color of river mud, dull enough to vanish into any crowd. The crimson footman's tunic, sodden and betraying. She sliced into strips thin as bootlaces. Each scrap went into the stove belly, fed to small flames until nothing remained but curling black petals. The pauldrons she crushed beneath the iron grate, denting their lacquered tin facades so no red gilding remained. By the time the boy finished gnawing his bread heel, no trace of the Lannister soldier lingered. A cautious dawn crept across the rafters. Slanting beams revealed the old man had died during the night, mouth sagging around a last unfinished breath. Arya closed his eyes and covered him with the blanket he would not need again. The boy watched without expression, though his broom trembled slightly. Arya knelt, cut a length from the dead man's gray beard. Superstition Sirio had given her. Carry a stranger's hair when slipping unseen, for the stranger watches his own. She tucked it inside her boot, felt the cold scratch of hair ends against her ankle, strangely reassuring. Below stairs, Magpie Bess cursed at a wine jug already empty, and at the harvest of rumors customers traded in lieu of coin. Arya paid for a bowl of gruel with actual coppers, nodded at the innkeep's grudging thanks, then listened while the common room buzzed. 8 bodies they found, a potboy declared around a mouthful of boiled oats. Hands guards each with throats opened slick as eels. 8? I heard 10. That, from a washerwoman, wringing her kerchief. And they say a wolf did it. A dire wolf inside castle walls. Nonsense. The boaster's tone belonged to a dyer who stank of lie. It were Sellswords from Meyer, carving a warning for unpaid wages. A warning? They near burnt the tower to cinders, fool. That's rebellion. The potboy again. Kingsguard snatching half the harbor. No ship leaves till they find the killer. The washerwoman's hands trembled. 7 protect us, it'll be war. War dight. The word landed in Arya's gut like sour wine. If King's Landing closed its gates, escape by land became a crawl through forests patrolled by lions. By sea? The harbor might yet yield cracks between nets. She ate her thin gruel, unmoved by taste or noise, and let her thoughts weave paths across rooftops, down cistern tunnels she had mapped only in rumor, an old smuggler passage beneath the dragon pit, said to open onto river shallows at low tide, perhaps, or sewer gratings that spilled into Blackwater Rush behind Ragpicker's barge, fouler, but likely unguarded. She set needle across her knees and traced imaginary lines along its edge, mapping tomorrow upon steel. Overhead the bells faltered at last, falling to intermittent echoes that died in the labyrinth of streets. Somewhere a horn answered, a rich commanding blast that might have rolled from Lannisport's citadel. Then the roar of a crowd rose, a single heaving sound that vibrated tavern shutters. Tyrion once told the council. She recalled hearing that mobs are storms in leather shoes. They gather from nothing, and from them nothing remains. The city now bristled with such storms. Magpie best shooed her out when the morning trade thinned. Arya stepped into noon light, already glaring against puddles from the night's rain. Steam lifted off cobbles in faint spirals. Beggars lined the alleys outside sept doors, cupping hands for alms from small folk, adding prayers to the tower of petitions swelling heavenward. The air smelled of fear and incense. She needed coin. Tywin's purse had been heavy once, but 3 weeks of bribes and nightly rental had whittled it lean. Fighting her way west would require horses, provisions, perhaps a forged pass or two. So she drifted toward the street of silk where dice games thrived, behind curtained thresholds. Gamblers in King's Landing respected a slim blade and a quicker tongue. She owned both. At the third burrow of ill-lit lanterns, she found a table of sellswords sporting dusk blue cloaks, trimmed with shark teeth. Stormlanders by the accent, newly arrived if their heavy pouches meant aught. She watched their game of tiles over castle. Ivory rectangles slapped, flipped, wagers doubled. After a round where the pot swelled with silver, Arya sidled near, voice pitched into bawdy jest, offering to pour their wine for a cut of the stakes. One man, Raymond, she learned by their shouts, pulled her onto his lap and laughed too loudly. She played shy barmaid while her fingers explored loose knots on his purse. 4 hands later she owned 6 silver stags and 2 golden dragons, having lifted them clean when a brawl erupted between Raymond and a rival, accusing him of swapping tiles. She slipped through crimson curtains and out a back window before wine turned to blood. On the roof, she paused to breathe city wind flavored by drier heat and distant forges. Below, the street of silk quivered with feverish traffic. People hunting safety, profits, answers. She caught fragments. Joffrey quarreling with his mother, Cersei's sob heard across the throne room. Pyres lit in the tower yard, burning the dead so infection would not breed. And a single word edged every muttered sentence. Succession. Without Tywin, who steered the ship of state. The king, said some. The queen, said many. But others whispered another lion's name, a lion whose scars had not undone his will. Jaime. Yet the Kingslayer was still prisoner in Riverrun's halls if rumor held. So then Tommen, still mewling, or Tyrion, the dwarf, or Varys, or perhaps no one steering at all. Arya crossed 3 lanes of slanted tiles until the rooftops leveled beside the great Seeptide. There she crouched among stone saints weather-eaten and bird-speckled, surveying. Gold cloaks mustered in the square below, lining ragged ranks like teeth. Commands barked. Lines split. One column toward Mudgate, another toward the western hills overlooking Rose Road. Barricades rose from cart frames, forming makeshift gates at each quarter. 4 children chased a hoop across the plaza, heedless of the army ant swarm. Arya watched them weave between soldiers and rubble. She envied how the city's upheaval became a game to them. Then a high horn blew from the Red Keep, and the children scattered, hoop clattering to rest at a guardsman's heel. The outer gate of the keep swung inward, revealing a troop of mounted knights in Lannister red, helms crested with gilded lions, their leader bearing a black pennon quartered by twin golden towers. That sigil she recognized from Tywin's letters. Sir Adam Marbrand, commander of the city watch in all but name. If Marbrand rode abroad, fear had bitten bone. She would ride the current those fears created. Noise disguised noise. Chaos could cloak a single figure crossing watchtowers, where rotating sentries hardly knew one another. Tonight, with torches guttering and tempers raw, a shadow might pass unchallenged. But she needed one more thing before she fled. Her sister's name. Sansa had vanished after the king's wedding. Some said smuggled away by the imp, others that Dantos the fool spirited her onto a ship bound for Bravos. Arya tasted both lies, and found neither satisfying. She could not leave the city without learning if Sansa yet breathed. So she followed rumors like breadcrumbs, letting them guide her deeper into corners she had avoided till now. Near the docks district, she sought out an urchin called Spindlejack. A boy no older than she, but with webs of information laid throughout the wharves. He sat on a bollard twisting rope fibers into tiny braids, each sold later to gullible sailors as charms against drownings. Sansa Stark. His eyes, bright as fish scales, flicked up. Name vanished when the Tyrell girl walked cloaked in flowers. Hints say she flew with the imp's gold. But gold can gild a cage as well as unlock it. Your copper buys naught but rumors. Now, Arya traded a silver stag. Buy me the scent of her trail. Spindlejack nibbled the coin's edge, then spat. Dwarfs and fools both vanish with her. Sailors swear a cog slipped anchor night of Joff's wedding, headed north by the Look, hugging coast. Captain's name, Shrouded Roach. He shrugged. But roaches crawl under every plank. Hard to squash. North. The word throbbed like distant thunder. If Sansa sailed north along coastlines, Arya might cross paths, but only if she escaped King's Landing soon. She thanked Spindlejack with another coin, earning a grin that revealed a single tooth carved from mother of pearl. Luck, he said, flies swiftest on broken wings. Dusk pooled in the gutters by the time Arya approached the river gate, where the Wash, King's Landing's filthiest drain, met the Blackwater. Muck-brown floodwater sluiced through an iron grill half submerged by tide. Two guards with halberds lounged nearby, half-heartedly poking debris that clogged the flow. Above them, a lantern swung, casting oily radiance over ripples. Arya watched from behind a crate stacked with jars of pickled eel. Each minute the guard's posture slumped more. When thunder rumbled, not from sky, but from stampeding hooves along some distant boulevard, they leaned to gape toward commotion. That was her moment. She slipped waist-deep into the torrent before they glanced back. The water reeked of offal, choked with straw and entrails. Cold seized lungs with feral claws. But she pressed on, fingers finding narrow gaps between rusted bars. Needle. She had wrapped in oiled cloth. Strapped against her spine so steel would not flash. She exhaled, slithered through a hole scarcely broader than her shoulders, scraping flesh raw where iron bit through shift. On the far side she splashed into darkness smelling of river sludge and rat nests. Water flowed knee-deep along a curved tunnel, whose walls shone slick as eel skin. She waded left, feeling slope increase toward Blackwater's open mouth. A score of paces brought moonlight, pale and tremulous, filtering through a broken grate. Arya paused, listening. Overhead, gulls shrieked, waves lapped hulls. No human footsteps. She pulled herself onto stone lip of the outflow and crouched behind barnacle-encrusted timber. Downriver, lanterns dotted the harbor like candle stubs upon night's cloak. Guiding. Upstream, farther inland, the great stone arches of Maegor's ramparts loomed. She saw boats moored against pilings, crews shouting, nets heaving silver catch. But between her and those piers drifted smaller craft, skiffs and punts used by ferrymen after gates closed. 2 such ferries glided beneath the arch of the Kingsbridge now, their boatmen guiding poles with languid precision. She chose the second, waited until it drew abreast of the outfall. A fisherman, face hidden beneath reed hat, hummed an off-key lullaby. Arya whistled once, the note Varys' songbird had taught her in Harrenhal, 3 rising, 1 descending. The boatman stiffened, but did not turn. "Passenger," he murmured as she waded through shallows. "Coin first." She tossed a silver stag that splashed, sinking beside Hull. He netted it, with practiced flick. "Destination? Mud Isle," she said, naming a silt bank where smugglers tallied contraband. "Then upstream. No questions," he persisted. "Dead men ask none," she answered. The boatman grunted approval. She clambered aboard, kneeling at stern beneath faded canvas. They drifted under bridge span where barn swallows nested among moss bricks. Passing arches framed slices of city, gates, torches, banners. She saw the red keep again, stark against night, now ringed by fresh watchfires. A tremor ran through her when she thought of Sansa locked in that fortress, but Spindlejack's lead offered hope. She pressed the twinge beneath ribs and focused on the river's hush. As they rounded Mud Isle, the boatman shifted, poling into reeds. "Here." He jerked chin toward muddy flat. "No stay. Tide climbs." Arya leaned close. "I need farther up. Salt pans if you dare." He laughed, a bubble of sound like gravel shaken in a pot. "Dare I do. But price doubles each league once city's wrath follows." "You killed a lion." Her hand found needle's hilt. "I have coin, and I have this. Steel I own." The fisherman shook head. "Dragons buy silence better. 2 for the salt pans." She paid. He bid each, satisfied. The skiff nosed northward, hugging left bank, where willows wept long strands that brushed river skin. Hours fell away. The fisherman's hum resumed, soft cadence melding with water slap. Arya slept curled like a cat, dreams twitching her fingers where they cupped the hilt. In one dream, Tywin's eyes glowed green as wildfire beneath the bay, and his sword grew roots that bound her ankles. But she severed each root with needle, and woke when dawn spread vermilion. Salt pans waited, a marsh-rimmed village cowed beneath smoke from its saltworks. Kilns vented black plumes that smelled of sea and ash. Seagulls circled, shrieking. Though Lannister banners had flown here once, their threads now hung rotting. Only wary villagers watched boat landings, hands on axes made from driftwood and rusted heads. War had starved them but not yet broken their backs. The boatman collected his oar. End of voyage. Lions hunt rivers soon. Arya stepped onto weathered planks. A memory flared, one of rowing with Gendry and Hot Pie, fleeing Harrenhal under star-pricked sky. Hot Pie would bake tarts somewhere safe now. Gendry may be swinging hammers for Thoros yet. She envied the simplicity of forging steel over forging vengeance. She spent 2 days gathering provisions. Dried cod, a whetstone, needles of pine pitch for lighting smokeless fires. At night, she slept under a derelict galley hulled by rot, listening to waves slap barnacle plates. Villagers remained cautious but accepted her trade, for coin rarely came to salt pans anymore, and fear rode every grief-swollen tide. She learned of raids by sell sails loyal to no crown, of wolves crossing Trident for meat human or otherwise, of Freys sending envoys west with promises carved on flayed skins. Robb Stark's name still carried among fisherfolk, but now it ricocheted between hope and doubt, depending which winds bore ravens last. On the third dawn, a single-sail carrack docked, its hull scarred by brine and arrow. Crest on sail, a yellow squid with red-tipped tentacles. Ironborn. Men disembarked, heavy with chainmail and authority. The salt wife who sold Arya cod whispered that such ships raided coasts south of Seaguard, now come to treat with Lannisters since Balon Greyjoy's corpse fed crows. If Lannisters sought allies among Krakens, then war's lines redrew themselves again. Arya weighed options. Northbound roads twisted through territory where banners changed weekly. She could disguise as fisher boy, join a saltworks convoy upriver, till it crossed Stone Hedge maybe. Or she could shadow the Ironborn. Krakens feared no lions perhaps, and where they sailed Lannister eyes scarce followed. But Ironborn took thralls. She scouted them from behind stacked salt barrels. Their captain, a gaunt woman with hair the hue of wet tin, barked orders clipped as steel bites. She swore by the drowned god, but carried herself like one risen above mere pillage. Arya observed patterns, calculating which deckhand owned the keys to water casks. How often sentries changed near gangplank. That night, a storm rumbled beyond horizon. Clouds smeared moonlight, cloaking the Carrack. Arya crept along pier beams slick with moss. She rose where a coil of rope spilled from gunwale. No lanterns on deck. Ironborn trusted stars. And those stars were smothered by the coming squall. She swung over, landing soundless on tarred planks. Voices carried from forecastle in guttural drawl, arguing which shoreline ripe for next reeving. No feet padded near quarterdeck where cargo hatches yawned. She slipped below. Rank dampness greeted her, brine and bilge. Crates stacked like crude ramparts, lid marks stenciled with House Kenning crest. Spoils. She searched quickly for stores. Bundles of hardtack, kegs of ale, casks of fresh water. Into her pack went what small pouches of dried fruit she found, along with a roll of sailcloth she could fashion into sleeping tarp. At last, she uncovered a chest smaller than the rest, banded with brass and latched by simple hasp. Needle wedged beneath. The lid popped. Inside gleamed black oilcloth bundles. She unwrapped one and hissed. In her palms lay daggers of pale steel, ripples along blade edges, like waves upon shore. Clear as sky they were, obviously Valyrian or near enough to fetch kingdoms. An Ironborn captain carrying such cargo would slit throats to keep it secret. Footsteps creaked overhead. Arya's heart flew against ribs. She rewrapped daggers, replaced chest exactly. She reversed course to ladder, but voices filtered below now. 2 men descending. Boots hammering rungs. Nowhere to hide but behind crates. She slipped through a narrow gap, made herself breathless shadow. The men argued. One name resurfaced. Bolton. The gaunt woman, captain negotiated to ferry Bolton envoys downriver, following Frey wedding at Twins Dyksea. Price doubles when Lannister gold dries, said the first man, whose voice Arya recognized from deck. The captain. Bolton flays gold from flesh, replied second, laughing. They riffled crates, checking inventory. Arya listened, chills racing along her arms. Bolton and Frey in league. The wedding near. Even without Tywin, the knives arrayed at Twins aimed north. She must warn Robb. But she was alone. Half-starved. Days away by river or road. The men left. She waited until silence draped again. Then she climbed, crossed deck under storm-muted stars, slithered to pier. Thunder boomed. Rain sheeted. She ran, swallowed by curtain of water that cleansed the stench of bilges yet chilled bone. Inside derelict galley she kindled pine pitch, mind sprinting. Bolton, Kine. Frey, Wedding, She recalled her mother's laugh echoing across Winterfell's yard. Catelyn's eyes when speaking of Uncle Edmure, proud yet resigned. If the wedding was trap, she could not remain spectator. But how to cross leagues in less than a fortnight? Ravens flew faster than girls, but ravens belong to lords. Unless she stole one. Seaguard's rookery lay 2 days' sail north for a swift vessel. Salt pans kept no ravens, but Ironborn did on their carrack for far shore messages. Return and seize a bird? Too great a risk. Better. Hire a fisher to outrun the storm up the Trident. Land near River Run. Warn whomever stood guard. Yet Lord seldom heeded ragged girls. She required a seal. Tywin's parchment. The orders she took might serve. She unrolled it. Orders for Sir Giles Rosby to send wagons of winter stores east. But the lion seal itself, pressed into red wax, mattered more than words. With it she could forge new message under Tywin's hand. If someone recognized difference, perhaps confusion enough bought time. Ink she possessed, not. Quill, perhaps plucked from gull. Wax? She could melt crimson candle. Stamp with lion seal stolen. She had no seal stamp. Yet Spindlejack, cunning magpie, might mold lead cast for a price. But King's Landing now barred. Salt pans offered smiths. A simple impression in soft clay could produce lead duplicate. She made a plan as wind howled through ribs of wreck. At dawn, smithy bell clanged. She found old Wex the tongs heating nails. Coin for cast? She asked. He eyed the wax seal she offered. Lion rampant and lifted brow. Might bring headsman if caught, his look said. But 2 golden dragons clinked. He shrugged. She pressed seal into clay, left him to pour molten pewter. Hours later she returned for disc, cooled and filed. Wax melted over lantern, pewter seal plunged. Lion shape emerged crude, but serviceable. She purchased ink made from soot and vinegar, practiced Tywin's tight angular hand on scrap, until muscle memory mimicked stroke. Then she drafted letter. Sir Brynden Tully. By my authority, the Northern Boy King marches on the twins. Reinforce Edmure's wedding with caution. Send trusted outriders to River Run post-haste. Lord Tywin Lannister hand. She worded it vaguely, enough to warn Blackfish without exposing herself. Wax sealed, pewter pressed. Now to find Raven. The ironborn Carrick doubtless kept one in Captain's cabin. Risk steep, but storm still hammered piers. Watch would be thin. She waited for twilight, cleaned mud from boots. She tied hair high, disguised as deck swab. Shoulders rolled in ironborn swagger. At dusk, she strode boardwalk, approaching gangplank with bucket. 2 guards shivered under awning, complaining of cold mead. She offered bucket, said Captain ordered deck scrubbed of gull droppings. They waved her on. She crossed deck into aft cabin lit by whale oil lamps swinging on chain. Charts cluttered table, bronze sextant gleamed. Cajun corner held 2 crows, not ravens. Smaller, but trained alike. She tied scroll to one leg, opened hatch. Crow flapped confusion, then darted out porthole area unlatched, heading inland over marsh. Success tasted like iron, mixed with dread. Message might reach River Run in time, or Crow might vanish to hawk. She could do no more. When she turned, the gaunt captain stood in doorway, shadow-long sword in fist. Rainwater dripped from slanted brim of her hat. Eyes glimmered like flint. Stowaway crowkeeper, she rasped. Name, purpose. Deck swab, Arya lied, hand drifting toward needle concealed down boot. Deck swabs use mop, not ink. Captain advanced. Who's your god? The many-faced, Arya answered, not knowing why, only that truth felt armor. Captain halted at that. Suspicion giving way to something like respect. Then, where many faces elsewhere, she gestured toward hatch. Iron price or flight. Choose quick. I have no salt in ears, Arya said. I go. Captain stepped aside. Arya strode past, pulse a drum. Yet before she reached door, Captain's voice stopped her. North wind rises, little crow. When it blows, lions hide behind rocks. But krakens thrive. A grudging benediction? Or threat? Hard to parse. Arya nodded once, then vanished into storm-soaked dusk. That night, she abandoned salt pans on a borrowed skiff, guided by a boy she bribed with half her remaining coin, and promise of more in River Run. They pulled against current till arms shook, switching when one tired. Moon broke clouds, silvering water, and the ghost mists that rose from surface. Frogs sang dirges, owls wheeled overhead. Once they saw shapes on eastern bank, horsemen bearing flayed man banners. Bolton scouts. They drifted behind reeds until hoofbeats faded. For 3 days, river slog tested sinew and soul. Rain eased to drizzle, sun peaked watery through clouds, drying clothes stiff with salt. The boy, Merritt was his name, spoke rarely, but on second sunset, He revealed he once served at Green Fork Ferry, where Clegane butchered men in service of Joffrey. He fled after brothers died. Arya shared crusts, surprised by warmth creeping through her caution. On third dawn, towers of River Run rose, proud yet battle-scarred, pennants rippling. Catapult damage from last siege still marred curtain wall, but banners of stark direwolf quartered with Tully trout flew. Yet outside gate, activity churned. Supply wagons, knights arrayed for march, women weeping farewells. Something stirred inside. They moored in shadow of elm. Arya left Merritt with skiff, promised return by sunset. She approached postern through reed beds, signaled with bird call once learned from Northmen scouts. A sentry, Riverlander archer bearing dented helm, challenged. She gave false name, said she bore message for Sir Brynden in Tywin's seal. Curiosity plucked gate open. Inside yard smelled of wet straw and armored horses. Arya kept hood low, dodging stable hands. She glimpsed Blackfish near well, giving orders to outriders. Time short. She pushed through throng, stood before him. His hawk eyes narrowed at her height and mud-smeared face. "Message," she said, offering scroll. He broke seal, scanned. A frown carved across his brow. "Where did you come by Tywin's hand?" "I stole it," she said. Honesty again. Odd shield. Brynden glanced at her fully then. Shock flicking behind stern facade. "Gods." Voice hushed. "Lady Arya." She flinched. No one had called her lady for ages. "You know?" "Your eyes." Same as Ned's when he stood in these yards, youth long gone. He ushered her to alcove beneath arrow slit. "We thought you dead." "Alive," she said. "But Robb, listen." She relayed Bolton Frey plot gleaned from ironborn tongues. Tywin's death. City in uproar. Blackfish's jaw tightened with each word. "If true, wedding is slaughterhouse," he muttered. "I ride tonight to intercept my niece and king. Ravens may outrun me, but I'll carry warning still." He snapped fingers, summoned captain of guards. "I'll ride too," Arya said. "No." His refusal rang steel. "You're hunted inside walls and out. Stay. When chaos erupts, you'll be shield for naught." She bristled. "I'm no child. You're a Stark, and realm needs Stark's breathing." He softened slightly. "Shelter here. Once Robb's safe, he'll fetch you." "Shelter. Dunshelter." The word tasted bitter. Yet logic weighed heavy. Alone she could not cross Westeros. She agreed, but heart sagged. Blackfish arranged chamber in Maester's turret. Small and window tight. There Arya washed grime, bound hair anew, cleaned needle. Hours passed. Distant horns signaled riders departing. Hooves fading like thunder receding. She waited, pacing small circle, every twitch of candle casting phantom enemies. Somewhere below, Edmure's minstrels rehearsed wedding ballads, harps singing fragile hope. The music pierced her chest. At midnight she could not bear walls. She slipped out, descending spiral to old archive where dust blanketed rolls untouched. Among them she found maps. Twins, Green Fork, Neck. Candle flicker traced roads Blackfish would ride. She tracked him in her mind, counting miles. Dangers. Dusky forest rife with Bolton scouts. Ford where Freys might levy toll. She prayed not to gods, but to Nymeria, to pack of dreams, to wine that shrouded her killed father's voice. A shuffle startled her. Maester Vyman, stooped, entered hunting rare parchment. He blinked at her candle. "Forgive," he croaked. "Couldn't sleep." She shook head. He noted map spread. "Blackfish rides?" he asked. She nodded. Vyman sighed. "War's river floods every bank. We but flotsam." Da. From his sleeve he withdrew sealed message. "For you," he offered. "Arrived this eve by crow." She frowned, broke seal. Inside, careful Bravosi script read, "Little wolf, a debt is owed and paid. Your gift answered a prayer. The many-faced remember. If paths darken, seek the house with black and white. Say the words and walk. Yea. Yakin. She traced letters, pulse quickening. Bravos. Eastati. Path away from knives. But family lay west, north, bound for deadly feast. Yet, if they died, she stuffed note into tunic. Vyman peered but did not pry. She thanked him, returned to turret where dawn threatened again. Birds twittered outside slit window. She sat on cot gripping scroll until light speared horizon. Hoofbeats drummed yard near midday. She raced to parapet. Ravens circled, guards shouted gates open. A lone horse cantered through, rider sagging. Dust-coated surcoat of gray direwolf. Arya's breath locked when she saw helm. It was Daisy Mormont, her mother's guard. Tears carving streaks in grime. Soldiers swarmed. Daisy dismounted, collapsed. Blackfish had left only hours before, too late to ride back. Arya sprinted down, pushing past throng, reached Daisy as Maester examined her wounded arm. "Rob," she gasped. Daisy's throat worked. Words emerged broken. "King marches still. Wedding in 2 days. Frey's muster. Bolton banners among." Blood bubbled on her lip. Treachery certain. She gripped Arya's wrist with fierce urgency. "Tell Blackfish. Tell him turn, or all lost." Arya stood in ring of staring men. Decision struck like arrow to oak. If she waited, message might lag. Blackfish could not know yet this confirmation. She must follow. She fetched needle, pack. At stables, she found Roan, a rangy gelding unsaddled. She saddled him clumsy but firm. Swung astride, galloped before stablemen could object. East Gate opened under protest. She rode into sun-blanched road that curled north along Tumblestone. Dust churned clouds behind. Her heart surged with gain and fear. Ahead lay 2 days, maybe less if horse pressed hard. She would catch Blackfish or die in chase. In saddlebag, Jackin's note weight echoed alternate path. But she tucked it beneath jerkin. 1 letter for tomorrow. For now. She rode to stop a wedding of blood. The wind answered in lonely howl. Okay. The road north curled like a wounded serpent around the Tumblestone's curves, each bend revealing another tangle of reeds, another dew-silvered meadow where mist clung in tatters to the grass. Arya pressed Roan hard from the first pink glimmer of dawn until evening's violet hush, urging the gelding through rivulets that soaked his fetlocks and over shale ridges that sent sparks snapping from iron shoes. When fatigue threatened to fold her shoulders, she leaned forward, cheek to his sweat-slick mane, and breathed in the animal's breath. A raw, earthy steam laced with crushed clover. It anchored her better than sleep. She carried only 3 thoughts. The first was the Blackfish, hours ahead with his escort of picked outriders. The second was Rob. Rob at the Twins with banners furled, and trust offered open-handed to the Freys. The third was a cold, silent shape that rode behind her like a second shadow. Tywin's corpse, mouth forever parted in final calculation. From time to time she caught herself glancing over her shoulder, half expecting the lion's tall silhouette to be there. Eyes burning like banked coals. Each glance found only dust-swirled tracks and low hedges whipped by wind. Yet the chill lingered. By the second dusk her water skin hung light as parchment. A breeze rifled the hedgerows, carrying the warm, wet scent of distant cattle. Lights flickered beyond a stand of poplars. Farmsteads. Arya slowed, slipped from saddle, and led Roan between tree trunks until they found a creek shining like spilled quicksilver in moonrise. She sank to her knees, palms cupped, gulped 6 mouthfuls that stabbed blissful cold down her throat. The gelding drank, nose deep. Only then did she notice how badly his flanks trembled. "Sorry, boy." She stroked his neck. "1 more day. You'll stand in a castle stable tomorrow night, oats to your chin, I promise." Roan snorted, flicking an ear as though doubtful but willing to believe for now. She scouted the farmstead. A croft of wattle huts knelt in a bowl of rye, torches guttering by the door of the largest. Sooty smoke climbed from the thatch. Chickens muttered in their pen. No guard dog barked. In these wars, many dogs had already been eaten. Arya tethered Roan among alder saplings, then padded toward the huts. Blade sheathed but fingers tingling with readiness. A shutter hung open, leaking stew steam, and the muted murmur of voices. 6 perhaps, no more. She rapped twice. Silence fell. A stool scraped. The door eased wide to reveal a man not yet 30. Hair tied back with straw twine. Half a pitchfork leveled as spear. Arya offered her smallest, most exhausted smile. "Road weary?" she whispered. "Sleep for me and my horse, and coin for your kindness." His eyes traveled from her mud-caked boots to the cloak's frayed hem, suspicion eroding when he found no device or house badge. Finally he dipped his chin. "Coin first." She placed a silver stag on his palm. The metal winked in firelight. He stepped aside. Inside, the family, wife, 2 children, and an elderly grandfather gray as lichen, watched in wary silence as Arya crouched by hearth. The stew was barley thickened with carrot slivers. She accepted a ladleful and ate with slow gratitude, mindful not to seem ravenous though her belly cramped. Between bites she listened. The family spoke little. What words came out were brisk. Farmers talk about blight on north fields, and talk of Frey patrols demanding tithe. A shame for such fine weather, she ventured once, to coax more. The grandfather spat. "Weather's the same, folk changed. Frey boys ride through, take what they will. Promise safe road come wedding. All praise Lord Walder." He hawked again. "Safe as a snake's den. Is it soon, this wedding?" "Day after next," said the wife, voice tight. "Our eldest serves in Riverrun's kitchens, sent word they march tomorrow sunrise. Whole river teems with trout banners and wolves, they say." Hope banged inside Arya's breastbone. If Blackfish pushed hard, he might intercept Robb before the rivers crossed. She scraped her bowl, thanked them, and offered to take second watch for their safety. The man shrugged, grateful for a night without gripping the pitchfork. They laid a straw mat near the door. When all slept save crickets, Arya eased outside. Moonlight soaked the creek. She knelt, washed her face, staring at reflection. The child who once squatted in Winterfell's muddy yard had been scraped thin, sharpened until only blade and will remained. She touched her cheek, wondering if Sansa would know her now. Or Jon die. A swell of longing threatened. She drove it down. Tomorrow, dot. She slept 3 hours, then woke to a rooster's croak. While others still dreamed, she slipped out, left another silver stag beside the ashes, and fetched Roan. Dawn tinted the sky lilac as they trotted on. And by midday the road forked. The left branch bent toward Pink Maiden, the right north to the Twins. Fresh tracks scored the loam. Iron-shod hooves, many die-twike. Arya dismounted, traced grooves with her fingertips. The edges were still crisp, pressed within hours. A torn scrap of gray cloth snared in briar confirmed her guess. Blackfish's outriders. Relief fluttered, but only briefly. The horses had been pushed brutal hard, prints long between strides. He would not slow for a single girl, no matter her urgency. She mounted again, spurring Roan into canter. The gelding answered gamely, though his breath rasped. Miles blurred beneath drumming hooves. The world a corridor of dun fields, patched forests, and lonely mileposts, etched by lichen. Each hour, Arya rehearsed what to tell Robb if she outpaced Brynden. The full net of treachery, the iron-born rumor, the bloody undertow she'd felt in the Red Keep. She pictured her brother's wolf-red cloak, the frank warmth of his half-smile, and steeled herself against the possibility he would not believe a little sister sprung from shadow. By the time the sun sagged over western hills, Roan's gait grew uneven. Arya reined in near a copse of beeches, where ferns carpeted the bank of a narrow burn. She dismounted, pressed her forehead to his, murmured thanks. "Another hour," she said. Just one, then I'll walk beside. Truth was, she had to catch Blackfish now or never. Yet as she checked his shoes, she felt the ground hum. At first, she thought her bones tricked her, but the vibration swelled, mingling with a distant thunder not born of cloud. She climbed the nearest rise, and her breath caught. Across the far meadow, 24 riders galloped south, dust flags billowing behind. Their banners caught the dying light, a silver trout leaping upon blue and red. River Run's colors. She leapt into saddle, steered roan downslope, angling to intercept. As they neared, her arm shot skyward in a frantic wave. The riders fanned out, points lowering. Arya slowed. Free hand lifted empty. The lead knight, square-shouldered, mustache windswept, rind short. Halt! His men circled her at spear's length. She pushed back hood. I ride for Brynden Tully. I carry urgent warning. Brows bunched. Name yourself. Arya. The word choked in throat. She swallowed. Arya of House Stark. Murmurs rippled. The knight studied her face. The hand's daughter said to be dead. I'm alive, sir, and the Blackfish is in peril. Treachery at the twins. Freys and Bolton's planned slaughter. He motioned 2 riders. Escort her. The rest ride on. They wheeled, thundered away in fresh spray of mud, while Arya and her guards doubled back. Half an hour later, they found the column. Near 300 horse archers and men-at-arms drawn up by a ruinous barn. Torches snapped. Brynden Tully strode among captains, left hand curled over sword belt. His weather-creased face hardened when he saw Arya dismount. Girl, he breathed. Then louder, to the men. Stand easy. Helmets lifted skyward as he guided her aside. You risk much. Risk is already upon us, she said, pressing the news Dacey had gasped. Freys muster hidden blades in the twins' west yard. Bolton riders under cloak. They mean to kill King and host the night of the feast. Brynden listened, stone still. At length he exhaled through his nose. I rode because your crow's warning turned my bones to water. Now this dagger confirms. 7 damn Walder Frey. He rubbed brow. Robb is 2 marches ahead. Even pushing through night, we arrive morning of feast. But we cannot gallop 300 horses in dark. Thy'd founder. Send swiftest, Arya urged. You, me, handful of the lightest riders. Robb must hear before he sits at Walder's table. Brynden's eyes narrowed, calculating as Tywin's once had. But warmer. You ride well for slip of a girl. Better than your fattest outrider. He snorted. That's low bar. Then, decision set. He called for Nori, the swiftest Northman on a rangy sand mare, and Sir Desmond Grell. 70 picked lancers will follow. Main column 2 hours behind. We ride now. Horses were swapped. Arya surrendered roan to a squire's care, and mounted a sorrel courser lean as a drawn bow. Moon budded above ragged clouds, silvering helmets and spear tips. Brynden raised gauntleted fist. Hooves rolled forward like breakers. Oh. Night, riding dissolved time. Wind whipped words from their mouths. Sweat cooled to ice under cloaks. Hoof beats hammered rhythm steadier than any drum. Forest glades flashed past, trunks blurring into pale streaks. Once, foxes streaked across path, eyes ember bright. Once arrows of cold starlight pierced tattered clouds pointing onward. Dawn bloomed crimson behind them when they crested a bluff and saw the twins. 2 squat castles straddling the green fork, joined by covered wooden bridge, like a lidded sarcophagus. Campfires stippled the far bank where Robb's host sprawled. Wheels, tents, horse lines. Music floated faint, a piping tune chasing sunrise. Brynden pulled short beneath bannerless oak. Too quiet, he muttered. Where are pickets? Scouts on ridge? Demtra. Indeed, perimeter seemed thin. A lone sentry pacing far below. No patrols along water. The Blackfish signaled Nori to sweep south flank. Arya's knuckles blanched around reins. Somewhere among those tents perched Grey Wind perhaps, hackles rising with same unease. They walked mounts down track, cut through rushes. A guard hail came from trench, but Brynden replied in low code, and they passed. Once inside encampment, the hush struck uncanny. Soldiers cooked porridge, sharpened blades, went about tasks with forced cheer, yet a tension coiled beneath every gesture. Arya smelled fear the way hound once smelled death. Near command pavilion, a pair of guards barred them, scanning faces. "I must see the king," Brynden said. "Now." "But Sir Edmure's wedding breakfast begins within the hour," one replied, eyes flicking to Arya. Brynden swung down, tossed reins. "Then we're late already." He shouldered past, Arya at his heels. Robb's pavilion rose red and gray, sewn patches betraying repairs from rain and arrow holes. Outside, Gretchen Umber argued with Galbart Glover over wine ration. Both paused as Brynden strode up. "Blackfish?" Greyjohn blinked. "Thought you guarding River Run?" "Change of orders." Brynden's tone brooked no delay. "Where's Robb?" "Inside dressing," said Galbart. "Did something." Brynden pushed flap. Inside, a lumen of morning light slanted through canvas slit onto Robb's bare shoulders as a squire fastened a wolf-head cloak. Catelyn sat near Brazier plaiting her son's hair with slim hands. When they turned, Arya's heart leapt. Mother's eyes widened, mouth parting without sound. Robb froze, wolf-pin half-clasped. "Arya," Catelyn whispered. No time for tears. Arya stepped forward. "Mother, Robb it. Frey's plan betrayal tonight. Bolton with them. Bender." Stillness. Then Robb dismissed Squire with a nod. "Ain," he said. Voice tempered steel. Brynden unfolded details. Tywin's death, Crow's message, Dacey's wound, Arya's ride. As words spilled, Catelyn's face blanched bone white. Robb moved only once, picking up his sword and buckling it on. "We ride," he said at last. "Send word to Bannerman. Feast is cancelled. We march out." Greyjohn barged in, brow furrowed. After rapid counsel, they devised. Strike tent lines within hour. Light none after dark. Form shield wall should Frey's advance. But first, free Grey Wind, tethered in wooden pen near East Yard, where Frey's insisted no beasts disturb fancy gowns. Robb donned mail, kissed his mother's brow, and turned to Arya. "You saved us again, little sister." She wanted to throw arms around him, but armor bristled. Instead, she stood tall. "Save yourself, wedding's not safe yet. Then ride with my guard." She shook head. "I'll find Grey Wind." Robb hesitated, knowing her will, and at last clasped her forearm. Catelyn took Arya then, pulling her into fierce embrace. "Every raven said you were lost." She murmured against hair. "My brave girl. Still here." Arya swallowed hard. "But I must run." Catelyn pressed a dirk into her palm. A narrow blade with mother-of-pearl hilt. "Take. The gods send daughters back for reasons." Arya nodded, slipped outside. "And the East Yard lay inside the twins' western gatehouse. Frey men-at-arms guarded bar. Spear tips crossed. Arya approached at casual half-trot, helm shading eyes, a camp courier's tabard flapping. "Message for..." she called. "Sir Hostings at chapel," one guard grunted. "Orders to move the king's direwolf." She added low enough to suggest conspiracy. "Shall I tell my lord you delayed Grey Wind's gift?" Confusion flickered. "Gift?" She leaned close, smirking. "Only Freys would pen a king's wolf under shit-covered stalls. New quarters await by banquet hall. Lord Walder's honor guard to escort." She jerked thumb. "Let me see the beast." They exchanged glances. The younger shrugged. "No trouble's worth," he muttered, lifting bar. Inside reeked of hay gone sour. The pen toward the far wall rattled with faint growl. Grey Wind, senses attuned, had scented her. She crept, scanning for other eyes. None. Locks hung rusted, her dagger pried staple loose. The wolf surged forth. Hulking silver shape, eyes lambent gold. He froze, scenting her face. Recognition flashed. A rumble of joy vibrated his chest. She scratched his muzzle, whispering, "Quiet boy, time to run." She guided him through gate, throwing a nod to bemused guards. Once around corner she loosed him with a whistle. Gray wind bounded. Streaking between tents toward Robb's pavilion where he halted. Hackles raised at approaching fray party. Arya darted behind stacks of shields, yanking warhorn from post and blowing one blunt blast. The agreed signal. The entire camp erupted. Men grabbing spears, horns answering, banners unfurling like storm-tossed sails. Fray envoys approaching Robb drew back as umber axes bristled. Within heartbeats, lines formed. In confusion, Fray commander, Sir Ryman, shouted protest. Robb emerged armored, gray wind at flank, sword gleaming. His words cracked like thunder. By word from River Run, treachery discovered. All Fray arms to throw down weapons. We march free, with safe passage, or we carve it. Wolves and trout banners lifted behind. Panic swept Fray ranks. Some, perhaps guilt-ridden, obeyed and knelt. Others ran for gatehouse. There, Bolton riders, already skulking for ambush, charged out. Red-flayed men streaming behind. Arrows hissed. But Robb's guards were ready. Shields locked. Archers loosed volleys that darkened sunrise. Battle ripped the camp in two. Arya drew needle, darting between swirls of melee. She fought not through strength but angle. Hamstrings sliced, throats nicked. Once she stumbled on a stark archer bleeding out. She pressed cloth, but life fled fast. Fury roared inside. By bridge, Greatjin's roar rose above din as he hewed apart. Sereni's Fray standard and bearer with same swing. Bolton men reached for bridge chains, but men from House Mormont, led by wounded Dacey's cousin Lyra, held stairs, maces churning red. Arya spotted Blackfish, dueling a Bolton knight she recognized from Harrenhal days. She sprinted, slashing behind knee. Knight toppled. Brynden finished with savage thrust. His quick nod her only thanks before he plunged into next knot. Tay. From parapet, old Walder Frey himself appeared, flanked by guards. His shrill voice cawed curses, claiming guest right still stood if wolves would only kneel. An arrow, no one knew whose, struck his chest. He tottered back, vanished. A moment later, banners on both towers sagged half-mast. Thunder of iron rang across covered bridge. Arya followed Robb and Grey Wind across planks slick with blood, cutting down last Freys who barred way. The wolf leapt, pulled Sir Walton to ground. Robb's blade plunged, a mercy blow. At Eastern Gate they found Ramsay Snow, bastard of Bolton, masked and armored in blacks. He held bow drawn upon Catelyn, who had seized knife to hostage Bolton retainer. Ramsay's grin split leather hood. King in the north? He mocked. King of fools. Arrow loosed. Grey Wind sprang, intercepting shaft with flank. The wolf yowled, tumbled, but rose snarling. Arya lunged. Ramsay reversed bow, clubbing. She ducked, drove needle under arm seam. But the bastard's mail turned edge. He backhanded. She reeled, ears ringing. Catelyn slashed hostage's throat. Distraction enough. Robb closed, Longsword descending. Ramsay parried, but Grey Wind surged again, jaws clamping calf. As Bolton howled, Brynden's spear pierced from rear clean through lung. Ramsay crumpled, blood frothing lips. Catelyn knelt by Arya, relief and horror mingling. Robb pressed hand to Grey Wind's wound, arrow lodged shallow. "Maester," he called. Attendants rushed. Bolton banners wavered then fell. Riders scattered, pursued by Karstark lancers bent on vengeance despite old grudges. The battle broke within an hour. Those skirmishes crackled along ditch lines till dusk. And Shawand. They burned dead under evening's sorrowful glow. Walder's bodies, to show mercy rarely given, were interred in river silt. Robb stood beside pyres, soot streaking cheek. When flames reached high roar, he turned to his mother, sister, uncle, and commanders. This carnage nearly claimed us. We march tomorrow for River Run to heal and reckon. Then north, by every road still open. Greyjohn cheered. Galbart echoed. But Catelyn's gaze drifted to Arya. My daughter saved us, she said clear. Without her, Wolfsong silenced. She cupped Arya's face. Robb pulled her into embrace that near crushed ribs. That night, tents sprung anew. Guards doubled, but mood lightened, grim yet breathing. Arya sat with Brynden by low brazier, sharing watered wine. War's wheel spins again, he said, staring into coals. With Tywin dead, lanes shift. Lions will lash wild. Arya nodded. In her pouch, Jaqen's parchment rustled. Paths diverged once more. She could follow Robb north, reclaim Winterfell someday. Or sail east to Braavos, learn names of many-faced and sharpen justice. The road forked like river tongues. Later she visited Grey Wind, stitched by Maester, but restless. She laid forehead to his and whispered hopes of snowfields and cold streams. The wolf's tail thumped weakly, eyes gleaming in torchlight. Beyond, stars unfurled bright maps across velvet sky. She traced constellations as old Nan once taught. Ice Dragon, Warrior's Helm, the Needle. Somewhere south, Cersei and Joffrey still sat their gilded chairs, unaware a lion's roar had reduced to dying gasp. Somewhere east, a queen with dragons stirred oceans of flame. All threads tugged. Arya unsheathed needle, watched starlight ripple along blade. The steel remembered, as Syrio said. She vowed to remember too. Every road, every friend lost, every lie told. Memory would be her whetstone. The song was not ended, merely found new verse. And no end. 3 days saw the host encamped outside River Run, healing, reforging. Ravens flew, some north to White Harbor, some west to Ashemark under truce banners seeking peace, some to the Eyrie where Lysa's falcon eyed every scrap of Lannister weakness. In the Great Hall, Robb held council. Arya attended rarely, uninterested in levy counts. Instead she drilled with Lyra Mormont, besting men twice her age until they cursed, wild wisp with ice for blood. On the fourth morning, a gilded longship, Flying Kraken, sails appeared on the Tumblestone, escorted by Stark River patrols. From its prow, disembarked the gaunt iron-born captain with tin-colored hair. The very woman whose dagger cargo Arya had glimpsed. She requested parley with King Robb directly. The hall hummed as she strode in clad in coat of sea-green plates. She named herself Captain Myra Stonehand of Harlaw.Ja. Iron Islands, she declared, split since Balon's death. Some followed Asha, some bent knee to Euron Crowseye. Yet many captains sought different tide, weary of raids and drowned men's prayers. I bring you 50 blades and ships swift enough to slip a lion's throat, she said to Robb. We ask harbor, trade, and chance to feed our kin without reaving. In return we sever any Lannister line along coast from Fair Isle to Fair Market. Robb's council erupted. Some snarled, never trust Kraken. Others saw boon. Arya, listening from shadows, wondered if her theft and deception aboard Stonehand's Carrack had seeded this turn. She met the captain's eye. A spark of recognition passed, yet Stonehand only inclined head. Treaties drafted. Alliances forged of necessity. War taught strange bedfellows. Arya felt wheel turning, sometimes by her hidden finger on a spoke. And time became river current. A fortnight and half trickled under River Run's drawbridges. Scouts returned with news. Stannis massed men at Dragonstone, wildfire stocks vanished from King's Landing stores. The Reach hesitated to march without Tywin's goal. Night by night, Arya's dreams filled with wolves running across Snowblank just beyond dawn. One dawn she woke certain. She would ride east. Not now, perhaps. First Winterfell must stand. But someday she would cross the narrow sea, coin clinking with names unsaid, and she would learn the song of many faces. Until then, she honed. Robb's host moved north in segments to avoid supply strain. Catelyn rode a carriage near rear, Arya, refusing such comfort, prowled vanguard. They crossed the neck through reed paths guided by crannogmen whose painted cheeks glittered swamp green. At Moat Cailin, they found Ironborn garrison in tatters, victims of internal squabble. Stonehand's ships had indeed sown discord. The crossing caused only 2 skirmishes. As they entered Wolfswood, first snowflakes drifted. Gray wind bounded ahead, wound mended. Robb watched flakes linger on Arya's hair, smiling faint. "Winter is coming," he whispered, voice half awe. "Let it," she replied. "Mind. But peace is a season fleeting." East of Last River, ravens brought dire tidings. A sellsword host of 10,000 marched under Lannister coins, led by Sir Gregor Clegane, loosed at last from King's Landing's chains to wrench the north. Behind them rode the bastard of Driftmark with reach scorpions, and whispers said a pale sorcerer in glass armor guided their knights. Robb gathered war council beneath gray sentinel oaks. Snow-dusted cloaks, but fires hissed warm. Arya stood near mapstones, studying lines. She knew Clegane once by fear. Now fear hardened to blade. "We meet them before they reach Winterfell," Great John growled. "Field near Barrowton gives horse advantage. Yet narrow passes of weeping water let wolves strike from woods," Galbart argued. Robb sought her gaze. "Arya," she stepped forward. "The mountain burns villages. He expects northern hearts to scatter. Show him empty villages. Lure deep into forest where his size fails. Crannogmen teach. Swamp the giant, slice behind knee." She tapped map. "Guide them here, into Bear's Throat. Steep walls, no flank. Then close with pikes and fire arrows from ridges." Silence heavy. Then Brynden chuckled. "Young wolf sister shares his fangs." Robb nodded, fist thumping table. "So it will be." For 2 weeks they prepared, emptying hamlets, digging hidden pits lined with stakes, coating arrowheads in bog oil. Arya rode nightly with small raiding bands, severing Clegane scouts, leaving sigils carved in tree bark, a single wolf's eye. Finally, the mountain's vanguard pressed into Bear's Throat, a gorge of twisted pines and shale face. Snow fell thick, muffling hoof clops. As first ranks approached Bottleneck, torches erupted along ridge lines. Flaming arrows whistled, igniting oil-slick logs released downhill. Chaos swallowed column. War horns howled. Stark pikes surged from fog. The mountain roared commands, but echoes bounced. His men flailed, horses rearing. Amid swirling embers, Arya darted, sowing panic along packs of freeriders. She spotted the hound's scarred helm. Gregor's brother who'd rejoined after rumors of Arya's mercy, cutting through lines toward her. Their eyes locked across fiery snow. He hesitated. She slipped into smoke. His sword veered elsewhere, perhaps to fell other foes. Battle raged till moon's zenith, when the mountain himself rode flaming destrier into clearing, head above heads. He bellowed challenge. Wolves answered not with single champion, but with 100 arrows. Steel rang like funeral bells. At last, Greyjohn's axe cleaved Clegane's helm. Robb's sword found gap at collarbone, and the giant toppled with ground-quaking finality. Ash snowed. The sellsword host broke, scattering south. And then now won. Winter settled. War simmered, but wolves held the north. In the ruins of Winterfell, now reclaimed from ironborn husks, Arya stood by Godswood Pool, where black water mirrored red leaves. Robb knelt facing Hearttree. Gray wind curled beside. Catelyn watched from porch, tears of both sorrow and wonder. Arya traced bark grooves where younger self once practiced needle with Jon. Memories drifted. Sirio's smile, hot pies tarts, Yoren's rough song. She whispered their names. Later that night, she unpacked a small bundle. Pewter lion's seal. Tywin's rolled orders charred at edges. Jaqen's note. She fed orders to Brazier, watching ink curl into smoke. The seal she kept. Reminder of what Blade of Courage could change. The note she reread, committing Bravos' address to Bone. Robb called council to rebuild. Wintertown needed grain, White Harbor, ships, but before duties a smaller gathering convened. Family around stone hearth. Bran absent, beyond wall chasing three-eyed myths. Rickon lost along Skagos rumors. Sansa still unknown across narrow sea with maybe Imp's coin. Yet embers knit them for a breath. Robb placed hand on Arya's shoulder. Without you, none of this. Catelyn's smile trembled. You are your father's daughter, steel and honor both. Arya looked into flames. One day she would sail east and carve more names from her list. But for now she allowed warmth, felt scars ease under rising heat. Outside wolves howled. Inside hearth's roar answered. Snow drifted past shutter gaps, each flake unique, each carrying promise of new chapters unwritten under vast wheeling sky, where many fates traced arcs like secret constellations, and one small girl's blade pointed true. Always north, always home. Ka. Snow fell for 7 days without pause, blanketing Winterfell until its ramparts seemed carved from milk-white stone, and the crofters' village vanished beneath undulating drifts. Smoke and hammer-ring rose continuously from the courtyard forges, while the kitchens burned through 3 winters' worth of oak in a fortnight. Yet still the cold gnawed bone. Wolves ranged the gods' wood at night, their howls drifting through arrow slits like the forgotten verses of an older song. In those hours of black stillness, Arya liked to imagine that she could hear Nymeria far beyond, answering the pack with her own ragged chorus. She wondered whether the she-wolf scented her on the wind and turned northward, imagining home rebuilt, blood avenged. The cub grown to match her mother's stride. Skew-L. During daylight, Arya trained. The mews had been cleared and padded with straw. In that space she sparred against anyone reckless enough to volunteer. Karstark pikemen, Dreadfort turncoats now meek beneath wolf banners. Even Galbart Glover when the mood seized him. The North's veterans fought with a dogged pragmatism born of years in mail. They favored shield walls and brutal chops at hip and throat. Arya favored motion. She ghosted through their guards, drawing red ribbons across leather jerkins, once nicking a man's ear so neatly the flap clung by a thread before dropping on his boot. Afterward the master-at-arms squared shoulders and muttered something about Braavosi trick blades before limping off in search of the maester. Only once did Arya feel truly matched, and that was the morning Jon Snow returned. Ravens had carried word of his ranging months ago, beyond the wall in pursuit of dead things that refused to stay dead. Then silence. Catelyn still crossed herself each night at hearth's glow. Robb rarely spoke of it, though Arya saw how his gaze lingered northward whenever they shared watch atop the battlements. On the final dawn of the storm, a horn's wail floated over the inner ward. Gates creaked. Sleet whipped sideways. Through swirling flakes rode a black-cloaked column, ragged brothers of the Night's Watch. Half their horses walking ghosts, yet grimly upright. At their head, wrapped in furs white with rime, sat Jon, eyes shadowed but alight with a fire she barely recognized. He dismounted into her arms. For a breath neither spoke, both reliving the small courtyard at Winterfell years before where they used to duel with broomsticks. Ghost padded behind him, scarred and enormous, his coat blending with the driven snow. Grey Wind sniffed the direwolf only once before issuing a low huff of acknowledgement and stalking off, satisfied that the newcomer carried Stark blood enough. Jones' report turned Great Hall lantern light to glacial iron. He told of abandoned keeps, a fist of the first men drenched in cold slaughter, of giants battering oak gates and shades loping beneath frozen moons. He spoke last of a pale king in armor of sorcerous ice, raising the dead by the thousands outside Hardhome. Robb's council, already threadbare with ceaseless war, listened in appalled hush. When the echo of Jon's final warning faded, not even Grey Jon Umber had a jest ready. War with Lannisters could wait, Jon argued. Dragons in the east could wait. Everything south of the Neck could burn if the North failed to stand against what was coming. He did not beg. Starks did not beg, but the plea lived plain in his gravel tone. Send men, send steel. Send dragonglass if rumor spoke true, or Winters. Robb agreed to a levy of 2,000 spears, and what obsidian Maester Lewin could unearth from crated relics in the crypt vaults. Dispatching them meant stripping Winterfell to its ribs, yet no voice rose in protest. Even Catelyn, whose fear for Jon once bordered on cold disdain, simply closed her eyes and nodded. That night, Arya found Jon alone in the Godswood. Fresh powder hushed every step. When she emerged beneath the heart tree, he did not startle, sensing her presence instinct sure. "You move quieter than any ranger," he said. "I had a good teacher." She drew needle, laid its point against a trailing branch until snow shook loose in a tiny cascade. "Spar me," one bowed Tory. "I'm wearier than I look, and I'm half your size. Dance with me, Crow." In moon-washed darkness they circled, her brave Ozzy stance against his castle black guard. Steel chimed. Soft and brittle as icicle song, he pressed with power. She yielded, glided, struck for openings as Syrio had taught, never where she had been an instant previous. Twice she might have scratched him. Once he grazed her shoulder hard enough to numb the arm. At last he caught the flat of her blade upon Longclaw's bastard edge and twisted. Needle leapt from fingers, skittering across crusted snow. Jon halted, breathing fog. "You're faster," he admitted. "But ghosts should flee before winter's wind." She laughed then, honest laughter that startled both wolves watching from shadow. Retrieving needle, she sheathed it, and drew him down to squat by the Godswood pool, where twin moons trembled upon black mirror water. "Promise me you'll not let the wall fall," she said at last. "I can promise to stand on it until the end," he answered. "Whether it falls, that's for the gods." The many-faced listen better than the seven. She pressed a carved stone into his palm. The lion seal she had taken from Tywin's study, smoothed and darkened by many nights of finger worry. "Keep it. A lion's face for every night you stand watch." He turned it over, eyebrow lifting. "And if I need a wolf's?" "You have one," she said, touching his heart. And spring rumors arrived with the first crust of melting ice. Cersei had seized the Iron Throne outright, naming herself Queen Regent over Boy King Tommen, whose signature appeared on every decree, yet whose voice reached no ear beyond nursery walls. Highgarden withheld its armies while Mace Tyrell negotiated for Sweetrose concessions. Storm's End had bent knee to Dragonstone, thrown in with Stannis once Melisandre birthed flame wraiths across Blackwater Rush. And across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen's hatchlings, no longer hatchlings, were said to hunt elephants above the red dunes north of Korth. Robb convened council nightly. Some urged immediate assault on Harrenhal before Lannister strength congealed anew. Others pressed that the North's levy was depleted, scattered between White Harbor and the Wall. Catelyn pleaded caution. Fight one war at a time, while Brynden stalked maps like a hawk eyeing a crippled hare, muttering that lions bled. Now was moment to drive spear into heart. Arya attended each debate from shadowed gallery, but rarely spoke. Instead, Whose cheeks twitched when Sansa's safety was raised, whose fingers drummed when the Vale's neutrality came under question. She filed each tell the way a locksmith lines tumblers. In those weeks, the castle felt both alive with rebirth and haunted by decades-old grief. Masons replaced scorched rafters in the great hall with pine shipped down the white knife. They scrubbed soot from twin towers and hoisted new banners. A gray direwolf, its crimson counterfield echoing Robb's King in the North sigil. Yet when wind cut just right, Arya swore she still scented burning flax from Ramsay's fires, heard Theon's voice begging forgiveness in the echo of distant corridors. She never spoke of it, but some nights she left her chamber to walk ramparts till sunrise, needle in hand, as if killing ghosts required only finding them. When the thaw finally came, it arrived all at once. as though some giant cracked the firmament and warm rain cascaded through. Streams burst their banks, ice flows churned like grinding millstones. The main gate yard transformed into a muddy morass that sucked at boots and swallowed more than one unfortunate goat. On the third night of deluge, a messenger splashed through the outer ward with urgent tidings. Ships under black kraken sails, sheltered in the ruins of Moat Cailin seeking parley. Arya rode south with the advance column. She found Captain Myra Stonehand standing ankle-deep in brackish floodwater upon the moat's collapsed ramp, a ragged banner of truce in one fist. Her pale eyes reflected lightning fissuring distant clouds. Harlaw votes salt and snow. Stonehand announced, "Euron Crow's eye courts darker gods than the drowned one. My deckhands would sooner feast with wolves than choke on black blood offerings." She offered Robb 50 ships, thrice that in seasoned reavers, and a promise. Should the North harbor them, Harlaw's blades would gut any ironborn still sworn to pike, once Euron turned his eye westward. In exchange they desired small holdings along Stony Shore, a voice at winter councils, and leave to trade seal furs to White Harbor. Robb accepted on the spit-wet flagstones of Moat Cailin. Ceiling packed with shared horn of seawater drawn from the moat itself. Salt for salt, snow for snow, Stonehand intoned, slicing her palm. Robb mirrored the cut. Their mingled blood hissed in brine. That same evening, Arya found Stonehand sharpening a blade whose rippled metal betrayed Valyrian heritage. In flicker firelight, the captain's face seemed carved from driftwood and old regrets. "You were the crow thief," Stonehand said without turning. "The one who freed my birds and stole my daggers." Arya offered no apology. "Needed wings faster than horses." Stonehand's chuckle rasped like reef on hull. "Best theft I ever suffered. Our alliance here? Your doing." Euron's spies marked the missing chest, assumed a mutiny. Harlaw turned on him out of fear he'd feed us to his shadows. One theft, many tremors. Tides are strange. She extended the Valyrian dagger. "Keep it. North will bleed before spring turns green. You'll want steel that drinks deep." Arya took the blade wordlessly, its grip nested snug between her fingers, as though cast to measure. And now. By the time the last snows receded, Winterfell's courtyards rang with sorrel birdsong and the giddy chatter of stonemasons drunk on sunlight. Yet beneath that fragile bloom war's drum still thudded. A raven bearing the triple chevron of Frey arrived. An apology written in stiff courtesy, offering hostages and gold to mend broken guest right. None doubted the paper had been penned beneath Lannister dictate. Brynden urged hanging the bird's bearer and using the scroll as tinder. Catelyn argued Frey sons might buy peace. Robb stowed the parchment unread, eyes distant. 2 nights later, Robb slipped into the small hall where Arya sat cutting her hair short against summer heat, locks falling like raven feathers around bare feet. "Ride east with Galbard fortnight," he said softly. She looked up. Moonlight limned the angles of her jaw, made her seem both woman grown and still the girl who chased cats across Red Keep rooftops. "Bravos? White Harbor first. Then Sea Dragon point to Harlaw's swiftest prow. Mother objects, but..." He shrugged. "She fears losing you again. I fear confining you. You've winter's fire, Arya. And I need whispers that travel faster than ravens." "Dumb? You need an assassin," she corrected. "I need a sister whose eyes see edges mine do not." He touched the lion seal still looped about his neck. "When dragons cross narrow seas, our ravens may falter. Bring me tidings sooner. Bring me ally stranger. Just bring yourself home." She finished cutting, hair now ragged line just above shoulders. 5 hours story you promised once." She teased. "We've spun near half a lifetime." He smiled, tired, proud. "Give me 50,000 nights more." They embraced. For an instant, all battles felt distant. And the voyage across Bight and shivering sea. Hammered spray so cold, it sliced skin raw, yet Arya relished the rawness. Myra Stonehand's flagship, Sea Wraith, cleaved white-capped rollers like a spear drawn for the throat of the world. Dolphins paced in the ship's shadow, their sleek arcs luminous beneath gray daylight. At night, strange green lights rippled within waves. Deckhands hissed about drowned spirits guiding kraken brood to deeper trenches. Arya leaned over rail, inhaled brine until lungs burned, and wondered if Rhaegar's son across water tasted this same wind on his still fledgling dragons. She fell into shipboard rhythm. Dawn sword drills against aft mast, midday knot tying under bosun's instruction. Dusk perched at prow-carving wooden fishhooks, while Stonehand narrated legends of the Thousand Islands, where men worshipped stone heads with gemstone eyes. One eve, the captain spoke of Bravos, of the Titan's fires, of Black and White House, whose doors admitted beggar and king equally, of priests who whispered mercy with every breath. A face can be worn like any sail, Stonehand said. Shift the wind, and the canvas still holds, but the voyage shifts. Arya fingered the dagger's pommel, dragonbone inlaid with scrolling silver, and thought of Jaqen's note folded in her boot. When at last, the chop softened, and gulls shrieked overhead, white towers appeared on the horizon. Bravos of the 100 Isles, its slender spires bristling along a maze of green-gray canals. A hush of awe swept the crew. Even Stonehand, who claimed to have sailed seas blacker than moonless midnight, fell quiet. They made berth beneath the shadow of the Titan, whose bronze visage glowered at all newcomers. Customs officials boarded. Stonehand produced charter writs. Arya, cloaked in plain wool, slipped past scurrying scribes and descended onto a quay smelling of tar, smoke, and saffron. Streets spiraled like a nautilus. She followed the canal's curve, crossing arched bridges of veined marble, past markets where men in purple masks sold fig pastries dripping clover honey, past beggars crooning in half-heard tongues. Here no snow-choked doorways, spring reigned perpetual and damp. Somewhere a woman laughed, light and reckless, and Arya startled at the sound's innocence. She found the house of Black and White across a placid lagoon, its facade half ivory, half obsidian, doors open yet dark as pitch. A hooded novice barred her step. "Valar Morghulis," Arya whispered. "Valar Dohaeris," came the reply. She held out Jaqen's parchment. The novice read, nodded once, stepped aside. Inside lay silence so thick it stilled the heartbeat. Pools of still water mirrored painted pillars, candles burned with little smoke. Faces, thousands, watched from stone walls, eyes vacant yet not entirely empty. A priest with skin the hue of spent coal emerged. His shaved scalp reflected faint candlelight. "Many years since a wolf walked our hall," he intoned. Arya bowed. "I seek knowledge. And what name would you give for that boon?" She closed eyes. She saw Tywin's collapse, Bolton's arrow, Ramsay's grin. She saw Sansa's scattered path, Jon upon frozen rampart, Bran a shadow in distant dreams. Needle weighed at her hip, comfort and reminder. "Arya of House Stark," she answered. "Yet a girl can serve many faces without forsaking her own." Silence measured her. At last the priest's lips curved. "Drink then." He offered a cup. She raised it, tasted water chill and clean as first snowmelt. Nothing more. Yet as it slid down her throat, she felt something unfurl within, like a door creaking open, admitting a draught, scented of iron and forgotten psalms. And then, 3 years passed in the house of Black and White, though time there flowed oddly. She swept floors littered with dust from continents she had never seen. She washed corpses of paupers and princes, anointing each with sweet perfume, until she no longer retched at the sight of rot. She learned the tongue of Qarth, the whistle language of the Summer Isles, the coded lilies that courtesans painted on wrists in lists. Every fortnight she sparred beneath vaulted ceilings against masked mentors, whose motions blurred like kill darts. They taught her not merely to parry, but to become the space where no blade could reach. Yet at night, alone in dormitory hush, Arya traced Needle's ridged grip, and whispered the names of those she dared never forget. Cersei, Ilan Payne, Meryn Trant, Polliver, Rorge. Sometimes she added new syllables. Euron, Crow's Eye. The Night King whose phantoms haunted Joan's ravens. Always she ended with a silent word. Fate. Because no blade can sever its thread entirely. In her 3rd year, the kindly man tasked her with first field work. An old slaver from Tolos who kept a mistress in the Purple Harbor. The mark favored sweet wines and younger flesh. At dusk he stumbled along a quay, until dark-eyed courtesan offered guided path to narrowboat. No one noticed a barefoot girl, skulking along gangplank moments later, offering to scull for a single copper. In the cabin, the slaver sagged onto cushions, wine dripping purple from lip. The courtesan laid him gently upon ivory-inlaid headrest. Steel flashed. Valerian. Slender. One clean kiss under ear. Blood pooled silent. When the courtesan turned, she found the barefoot girl gone. Copper coin left upon deck. Mission done. No ripples. Back at the temple, Arya laid the borrowed face upon its hook among countless others, then whispered prayers to whichever god kept slaves from further torment. The kindly man said nothing, only touched her brow, but she saw approval in the calm of his pupils. Letters from Winterfell arrived seldom. Ravens risk storms and stranger perils across the sea of claws. But each line burned bright. Jon held the wall though shadows stirred. Robb secured Bear's throat, married Talisa of Volantis beneath Godswood boughs. Catelyn rode south to mediate truce between Vale and Trident. Bran's return remained rumored glimpse by trappers near Last Hearth. Sansa, still a phantom, was rumored in Old Town disguised as Septa. Arya read that paragraph thrice, heart fluttering at paths that converged and diverged like braided rivers. 2 more harvests waned. Then one dawn the kindly man summoned Arya to the pool of still black water. His voice bore weight of finality. A ship sails for Westeros on rising tide. A face must join its wake. He handed her a folded square of parchment. Within lay a charcoal sketch. A woman of middle years, regal tilt to chin. Hair coiled in silver net. Eyes proud. Mouth thin. Beneath it, a single sentence. The good queen must bow. Her throat tightened. The likeness bore Cersei's signature sneer. Price has been paid, the priest said. Your hand collects. Arya never wavered. Yet as she inclined her head, she felt the old wolf stirring, stretching within the borrowed flesh. In her cell she packed garments of a Lysini seamstress, a spool of shadow silk thread, pots of rouge and kohl, vials of stranglers and tears of Lys. Last she drew needle from cedar case, tested its edge, slipped it into sheath, sewn cunningly beneath dress folds. Standing before the mirror she realized she had grown. Shoulders wiry, eyes no longer child's. She touched braid, remembering long ago promise to Jon. I'll bring myself home. Now perhaps, home was not a place, but a task. Before leaving, she knelt at the pool. Balardo Harris, she murmured. Service is all. Yet she pressed a carved wolf's head. Small keepsake Robb had whittled. Beside water's edge. The kindly man would find it, and know that some debts remain unwashed. Nah. The voyage west was swift. A trysail Braavosi galley crewed by mute oarsmen, whose tattooed backs flexed like living calligraphy. Storms chased them across the shivering sea. But Arya learned at rail how to read cloud bellies for wind pockets, how to lash lines with knots that would hold the world cracked. The captain, a woman whose mouth was half healed from cleft, taught her the difference between star-rumored and star-seen, steering by tiny fluctuations in color that earmarked a southern wind about to swing. Arya memorized each until sky itself seemed another face to wear. 3 days east of Dragonstone they passed wreckage. A burnt hulk adrift, mast snapped, flags gone. Charred bones floated in clumps. The captain spat. Euron's work, she guessed. Or dragons. She would not tarry to learn which. At last they sighted spray-plumed cliffs of Crackclaw Point. Closer still, she glimpsed the swollen mouth of Blackwater Bay. Its waters churned by heavy ship traffic. Euron's black sails. Tyrell green and golds. Cahoric mercenary galleys. The war had cracked wider. Each faction smelled weakness in Cersei's throne, and rushed to tap bleeding gold. Arya disembarked under darkness near Driftmark, donned her seamstress face, olive skin, lilac eyes courtesy of ground, amethyst dust, hair dyed a vibrant silver pink. She took the alias Lizara, easy on the tongue for King's Landing swells, and hired herself as dressmaker to Lady Anya Waynwood's granddaughter, newly betrothed into the capital's spiderweb of minor alliances. Noble-born clients coveted Licini lacework. By the time her river barge glided beneath Mudgate's looming arches, she held 5 orders and 3 letters of safe conduct. King's Landing smelled worse than memory, a heady stew of rot smoke, spoiled citrus that clung to nostrils no matter how she breathed through mouth. Yet the energy crackled, markets thrummed, armories hammered day and night, banners changed weekly atop Maegor's holdfast. Cersei ruled by terror and spectacle, daily executions upon the Hill of Beller, wildfire displays at each sunset, free grain when rumors of dragon approach unsettled populace. But power spread thin. Tyrell blockade strangled grain out of Bitterbridge, Euron's raiders preyed upon supply convoys, and half the gold cloaks served coin first, crown second. Arya found lodging above a potter's shop in Fleabottom, the same warren where she once rented Magpie Bess's attic. Bess was long dead, caught smuggling acorn bread to starving orphans, but new faces replaced old with seamless cruelty. At dusk, Arya walked the district in her Licini guise, offering sample work to merchants' wives, gleaning gossip from drunken sellswords. Cersei's counsels shrank to silent sycophants. Tommen had not been seen in public for moons. Rumors claimed the queen sated sorrows with dream wine laced by Keyburn's dark herbs. One whisper drew her eyes brightest. Some nights Cersei visited the crypt beneath the Red Keep where dragon skulls once lined the hall. There, she arranged private banquets with House Heatherspoon's minstrel boys who played lyres of human bone. The queen drank arbor red until dawn while Qyburn's silent sisters kept watch. Arya spent 3 weeks weaving access. She gifted a lace choker to one silent sister in return for a hint of shift schedules. She bribed the Rat Pit's ratcatcher for maps of sewer vents abutting crypt cellar. She seduced a stable hand into revealing which mule bore Qyburn's casks of medical elixir down the postern stairs at sunset. Each piece slotted until the pattern gleamed. On the appointed evening, bravos shrouded the city in fog, thick tendrils that muffled every lamplight and drew tavern drunks into alleys to puke unseen. Arya, dressed in no fine lace now but in tight-fitting cloth of mottled gray, more dear. Are you our sewer grate behind the dragon pit, knee-deep in filth. She followed the chalk marks left by Ratcatcher's talk until a damp ladder rose. At its top waited a hinged grate. Beyond that, stale torchlight flickered. She emerged into a corridor smelling of whetstone and dust older than kingdoms. Dragon skulls no longer adorned walls. Cersei sold them to Korth for gold ingots, but plinths remained, like headless sentinels. Further on, the corridor widened into feasting chamber. There the queen lounged on couch of red velvet, wine dribbling down her chin. A boy no older than 12 plucked a lyre, eyes glassy from crushed lotus. 2 silent sisters hovered. Qyburn leaned to murmur something. The queen laughed, shattering in pitch as though drunk on grief. Arya waited, heartbeat a controlled staccato. When Qyburn dismissed sisters, instructing them to fetch more wine, Arya slipped behind a plinth, coasted along its shadow. Silent sisters walked past without glance. As they disappeared into passage, Arya ghosted behind, driving thin needle of glass dipped in strangler into first one's ear, then other's throat. They crumpled with soft thuds. She donned one corpse linen mask, hood, and robe, garb that hid stature and weapon both. Carrying wine pitcher, she retraced steps, passing Qyburn who barely lifted eyes, absorbed in coaxing the lyre boy closer to Cersei's couch. Setting pitcher on trestle, Arya poured goblets. Laced only one, Cersei's, with a measure of tears of liss potent enough to still a bull's heart, in 4 breaths. She approached couch, head bowed in servant's posture. "Wine, your grace," she intoned, voice muffled through linen. Cersei waved lazily. She took goblet. Qyburn accepted second. Oblivious. Arya retreated 3 steps. Heart drumming. Cersei sipped, sighed, set goblet down. She beckoned the boy. He began another melancholy tune. 5 strums, 6 taughty or. Cersei twitched, eyes widening. Fingers clawed at throat. Qyburn leapt, but poison already locked muscles. The queen slid from couch, mouth gaping like fish. Arya watched without pity as spasms subsided. Within 20 heartbeats, the lioness of Lannister lay motionless upon marble, wine pooling about gilded hair. Qyburn spun. His gaze collided with Arya's. Recognition flashed. He shrieked. She loosed a slim dart, ironwood sliver dipped in basilisk venom, into his cheek. He staggered, gurgled. Dark froth bubbled. As he fell, Arya caught his sleeve. "For the wolf you slew at Harrenhal," she whispered, remembering the northern smith apprentice left to rot on his racks. She let him collapse. The liar boy cowered. Arya pressed a coin into his palm. "Run," she said. He fled sobbing. Flames from toppled torch began to lick tapestry. Arya ignored them. She knelt, retrieving the lion seal from beneath her tunic. Carefully she closed Cersei's slack fingers around the emblem. "Lions bite lions," she murmured. Then she vanished into smoke-veiled corridor. And now all. King's Landing awoke to chaos. Word spread of the queen's death, of Qyburn's unnatural experiments laid bare. Cadavers stitched, wildfire brains, whispers of a mountain risen again. Gold cloaks bled each other in streets as Tyrell envoys stormed Great Sept, demanding guardianship of royal children. Amid the bedlam, no one noticed a seamstress vessel slipping downriver, crewed by mute oarsmen, bound north with holds filled by refugees and rumor. Arya stood on stern deck, hair once silver pink now cropped raven again. She had shed the borrowed face, letting river wind carve her own features fresh. In the distance, Blackwater sparks crackled. Wildfire kegs detonated in the keep's lower vaults where Qyburn had hoarded them, consuming secrets in emerald blaze. That chapter closed. Ahead lay leagues of marsh and bog, the neck, the swamps riddled with whisper men, then the King's Road broken by war's tread, and finally the Wolf's Den, where Robb's banners still flew proud against encroaching dusk. But before any of that, the shivering sea again, and a pale wall of ice where another war pressed harder each night. She touched the Valyrian dagger at her hip. One queen had bowed, but the Night King wore no crown. He wore endless winter, and winter had always been a Stark's to bear. Aye. At White Harbor she found the city thrumming with last-minute exodus. Farmers herding sheep onto cogs headed for Sisterton. Merchants loading grain into Bravasi tree rams at ruinous rates. Manderley banners whipped above battlements. Lord Wyman, half his bulk vanished to illness and fasting, greeted Arya in private chamber, hung with sea turtles. Brother Robb Riddy's host at last river, he wheezed. Jones ravens scream of ice demons already breaching Eastwatch. He begs every sword. Arya requested fastest courier north. Wyman offered sleek sloop, captained by his heir Sir Wyllis, newly released from Frey captivity. Departure at dawn, tide willing. That night she walked White Harbor's moonlit quays. The air tasted of fry oil and fear. Wharf cats threaded her legs. Somewhere, a brace of drunk Tiroshi sailors sang bawdy ode to tricolor hair. She watched their silhouettes sway against sepulchral harbor lights, and felt momentary pang. How small one blade amid continents convulsing. Yet she remembered Sirio's first lesson. Every sword tip is the world's center when aimed true. Dawn breath rose across slate water. The sloop? Silver Needle cut waves northward, its sail emblazoned with leaping silver trout. A jest Sir Wyllis insisted upon honoring his late friend, Edmure Dartau. As Hull hissed, Arya studied the horizon where sky met sea in pale promise, and she whispered names. Queen bows. Mountain falls. Euron waits. Night marches. Jon stands. One name she added only in thought. Arya. Because to don faces and shed them, one must know which still fits when all others peel away. And now. They reached Last River Fort in 4 days of hard wind. Snow-blanketed tents, but fires burned bright. Robb's host, now swelled by Karstark reinforcements, Barrow-Knight volunteers, and Stonehand's Ironborn reavers, encamped beneath ridge spiked with frozen pines. Grey wind howled greeting as Arya dismounted. Robb strode across icy ground, beard rimed, eyes fierce with welcome and burden. She relayed King's Landing upheaval. Cersei dead, Lannister forces splintered. Tyrell armies occupying capital under Tommen's nominal reign. Robb listened, mind flicking across possibilities. Alliances recalibrated, fronts shifted. War south may sleep, he said, but north is ablaze. Jon's latest message arrived same hour, carried by Raven with feathers singed. Eastwatch fallen. Tormund retreating to Shadow Tower. Undead giants pulling sledges of ice to breach the wall's wards. Jon held Night Fort with ragged garrison, awaiting reinforcements or dawn, whichever came first. Robb summoned War Council. At table of frosted oak, he spread parchment. North broken into squares of frost and flame. We march at nightfall, he declared. Leave none to winter's mercy. Mansfield passes choked by drift, Brynden warned. We cut through, Robb countered. Ironborn to flank along coast. Wildlings who swore Jon inside the wall will guide us through Skirling Gorge. Eyes turned to Arya. Robb clasped her shoulder. Sister rides with Vanguard. She met his gaze. A wolf, answers winter. Oh. Blizzards greeted their advance. Snow demons howled across barrow fields. Winds knifed through sealskin cloaks. Yet the north moved. Endless column of men, women, and wolves. Torches streaming like falling stars. Arya rode beside Stonehand's reavers. Dagger slung reverse grip beneath bracer. Night after night, they fought skirmishes against pale beings, whose eyes glimmered sapphire, whose touch froze steel brittle. Dragonglass arrowheads felled some, Valyrian steel bit others. Still, they came. At the shattered towers of Queenscrown they joined Jon's ragged survivors. Ghost limped but lived, muzzle crusted with dark ichor. Jon's face looked carved from ice, yet hope flickered when he saw Robb crest hill, banners snapping wolf upon crimson. They made final stand at Long Barrow, where first men once buried kings beneath cairns older than oaths. The Night King approached under green aurora, flanked by wights in tattered cloaks. Frost crept across ground under his steps, flowers of rime blossoming around cairn stones. Robb, Jon, Arya stood together atop ancient mound, grey wind and ghost bristling. A hush fell as snow ceased mid-air. Held by unseen hand. "We have no crown for you," Jon called. The Night King raised a sword of crystal, and wind screamed. Battle joined like the breaking of worlds. Fire arrows lit undead ranks, giants hurled mammoths at shield walls. Ironborn longships beached in flaming wrecks to disgorge reavers, hacking with axes that steamed against flesh colder than tombs. Somewhere Brynden fell. Spear through a 12-foot white. Somewhere Stonehand's laugh rang even as she vanished beneath collapsing ridge, dragging 3 pale spiders with her. Arya danced among shadows, gliding, thrusting. Each step a memory of Syrio, each kill a name struck. When Jon's dragonglass dagger shattered against a White Walker's staff, she tossed him the Valyrian dagger without pause. He caught, spun, severed creature's head in halo of crystals. But the Night King pushed forward relentless, eyes fixed on the cairn's heart, where 2 deerwolves bared fangs. Robb engaged him first, steel clanging with impossible cold. Sparks flew where red-redded steel met blue ice. Jon joined, blades weaving. Yet each parry grew slower as frost webbed swords. Ghost launched, but a backhand sent the direwolf sprawling senseless. Arya watched, soul aflame. Then she remembered the door within, opened years ago by House of Black and White's water. She stepped toward the conflict. slow, deliberate. Snowflakes twisted around her like curious spirits. She shed winter cloak, letting cold bite, and she began to dance. Not Sirio's dance nor Bravosi Waterdon's, but something older. Movement learned in Hall of Many Faces where silence taught shapes. She moved between breaths of combat, slipping under Robb's raised guard, over Joan's crouched feint, into the Night King's blind spot carved by hubris. Needle glimmered, a sliver of mortal heat. She leapt, twisting mid-air, plunging blade not into armor, but into a gap beneath left collar where ghost fire flickered within. Needle met no resistance. Sliding into heart of ice, she whispered one word, "Begone." Time fractured. The Night King's eyes widened, not in fear, not in pain, but in recognition of ending. Frost exploded outward in ring of diamond shards. An echoing howl, wolf and wind and death. Rose then vanished. The icy host collapsed like marionettes whose strings were severed. Silence thundered. Snow resumed falling, gentle now, as if world exhaled. Aye. They burned bodies for 3 days. Whites, walkers, men, wolves, all in great pyres that stained dawn crimson. From heights of Long Barrow one could see walls still standing, though breaches scarred its crest where giants had pulled ice free. Jon swore to rebuild. Robb vowed timber and men. Together, they carved new oaths into stones older than kings. On final night, beneath tapestry of stars blinking astonished, Robb set crown of birch and holly on Jon's brow. King beyond winter, he proclaimed. Voice raw. Wa. The wall is your realm, its watch our shield. Stark blood stands upon both thrones now. Bam. Jon removed crown, placed it first on Arya's head in jest, then set it beside cairn stone. No crown, he said. Only duty. They laughed, ragged, disbelief easing into relief. And now? Years later bards would spin the tale of the needle and the night. How a slip of a girl slew winter's heart with a sword meant for sowing. They would tidy dates, embroider motives, argue which king first knelt atop Long Barrow. But in quiet hours of Winterfell's new keep, Arya tended garden she planted beside Godswood Pool, winter roses, blue as noon sky. She pruned with small shears, fingers nimble from decades of bladecraft, and taught orphans of both wildling and northern blood the rhythm of water dance. Some evenings she joined Robb on ramparts, watching northern lights ripple distant horizon. Sometimes she still dreamt of faces lining a dark hall, whispering Valar Morghulis. But each dawn she woke, touched the wolf head carved into windowsill, and knew a truth even priests of many-faced dared not voice. All men must die, yes, but some live so fiercely that death itself turns, for a moment, to witness.